Hello and welcome to another edition of the How to Grow Your E-commerce Business podcast. I'm here with Jared Smithson from RJM Tax Exemption, and we're going to talk about everything you want to know about US tax compliance. So welcome to the podcast, Jared.
Thank you very much for having me, Trevor.
This is the fundamental question, what is US sales tax?
Okay, so it is very, very similar to VAT that we might have in Europe. It is a tax that is added to a sale or a sale of a service. However, in the US, sales tax is different by state. So you've basically got 50 different states making up their own sales tax rates, and there are 11,000 different sales tax jurisdictions to consider. So rather than just having VAT like it is in the UK, we've got 11,000 different tax rates for
So
sales
what's the kind
tax.
of range that these taxes go from and to?
So it ranges from 4% usually to around, I think some of the highest go to 12, 13%.
So it's
But
generally
the
lower than
average is about 7%. So it is a lot lower than your VAT, and it does range quite significantly.
So do these taxes, because when you see like a price on Amazon, is that usually including sales tax or excluding sales tax?
Typically, it will be excluding tax. So if you were buying a product for $100 and you were in New York, when you go to checkout, it would add the New York sales tax on automatically for you. And if you're in a state like Delaware where there's no sales tax, you would just go ahead and pay the $100. So
it's
Amazon,
a good deal.
yeah,
It's a good deal for Delaware people.
it is. Yes, yeah, that's right.
So do people, presumably it goes on the delivery address, does it?
It does, correct. So nearly all the time it is based on the delivery address. It's called destination, but there are some exceptions where it would be from where it has come from instead. So everything differs from state to state.
So are there any like kind of scams that people do where they get like use a forwarding address or something to try and avoid, you got a forwarding address in Delaware or pretend it's going to Delaware and then it kind of gets seamlessly rerouted? Because that's what I'd be trying to do.
Theoretically, you could do it, but then if you had to pay the freight or the additional shipping, it's probably going to work out more. So I'm not sure. But if you were doing it on a large scale, if you wanted to, buy products, then you might do something like that.
Okay. So so if you're like a UK seller selling, on Amazon.com or something, what are the rules for overseas sellers?
Yeah, so for overseas sellers, so if you're selling in the US, you're going to need to get yourself an EIN number, which is an employee identification number with the IRS. So there are two ways you can do it. You can either open up a US LLC in business and get an EIN for that business, or you could keep your European UK company and just get an EIN number for that, and then you can open up your Amazon.com account. You need the EIN number to apply for sales tax licenses or anything like that, and essentially that just identifies your business in the US.
Okay. I'm guessing is that a fairly easy process to get that?
It is, but it involves dealing with the IRS. So if you have a social security number, you can get your EIN online. It takes 2 minutes. If you don't, we either need to call the IRS, fax the IRS because the IRS are still using fax, or you can mail it and it will take months to arrive. So it is an easy form. You fill out your SS4 form. It's very easy to get, but there can be delays of up to 8 to 12 weeks to get that through. So that is probably the longest process.
Okay. So how do the rules differ by platform? So say, if you've got a company's got a Shopify website, and if you've got and you sell on, eBay or Amazon, how do the rules differ between these platforms?
Yeah, so with e-commerce, we categorize them into marketplace facilitators, or just your own website. So Amazon, eBay, Walmart, these fall into the category of a marketplace facilitator. Now, with sales tax and marketplace facilitator, there was a law passed in 2018 where basically marketplace facilitators had to start collecting tax by state on businesses' behalf. And by, I believe, 2021, they now do that for all states. So basically, if you were to sell on Amazon, and Amazon's going to collect the sales tax for you to your customers, and they're going to remit it back to the states. So it takes a lot of the burden, the time and effort, because you don't have to worry about filing sales tax. So that's a marketplace. However, if you're selling on your own website through a Shopify store, they do not have to collect tax. So you are responsible for determining where should you be registered for sales tax and make sure that you remit the tax back.
Okay. And how do you minimize your tax burden? The ways
Yeah.
that you can you can sort that out.
Yeah, so firstly, just briefly hit on a buzzword in the tax world of mine, which is nexus. So you only need to register to collect and remit sales tax in a state where you would have nexus. Nexus is just a fancy way of saying you have some kind of physical presence in the state. Or there is another thing which is called economic nexus. If you make a certain amount of sales, then you need to register. So the first things first is don't register to all the states for sales tax straight away, because you'll end up be filing for 46 states because 5 have no sales tax, which is going to take a lot of time. Or if you pay people, it's going to take a lot of money. So make sure you do a nexus assessment to see where you need to be registered to. So that would be the first thing I would always say to kind of minimize the expenditure. And then in terms of minimizing sales tax burden, or how you can save, is to make sure if you're a business that you aren't paying sales tax with your supplier or your wholesaler.
Okay, so talk me through the process. So you're a seller. What can I know? You offer a service around this. I'm a seller. I sell on Amazon, and I also got my own website. And how would I go? How would I go about setting up, making sure that I am properly set up for sales tax?
Yeah, so first things first, you would assess where do you have physical nexus. So let's say, for example, and I'm going to use a client I've had in the past. So they had an Amazon FBA store and they had a Shopify store. So Amazon FBA is fantastic in many ways because it fulfills your orders, but when it comes to sales tax, they will store your goods all over the US and create a nexus in many, many states. So first things first, you will need to determine where has Amazon stored your goods, which you can either use software providers to do, or you can look at it in the Amazon back office, and that will tell you where you have nexus. Most states you don't need to register if you only sell on Amazon because Amazon's collecting the tax. But if you have your own website as well, you would need to be charging tax in all the states where you are storing your goods through Amazon FBA. So for example, if an Amazon FBA you're storing goods in New York, Florida and California, and you've confirmed that, on your Shopify side, you need to be charging tax and collecting it for New York, California, and Florida as well.
Okay, so would you need to, you do that, collect that tax, you need some sort of app on Shopify to do that?
Shopify's got its own system back office where you basically just upload your tax ID and collect, and it'll collect the tax. Shopify also will track the economic nexus thresholds. So it would tell you that, Trevor, you've made $500,000 in California this year. You need to register because you've hit the threshold. It's got that all integrated into its back office already, and it prompts you and tells you when you need to register. You just need to know where to look.
Okay, so what do you guys? So this sounds like sounds like the kind of thing I could do myself. Why do we need you guys?
Yeah, so we assist people with registering to the states. So once you have got nexus in the states, you need to register for the sales and use or tax permits. So we assist people with registering. Then you will also need to file, and so that means you need to pay back the tax. So some states, you basically just, when you file, you just declare the sales, like they've got a flat tax rate of, let's say, 6%. You pay it back and it's really easy. Some of the other states, you need to file by locality. For example, California have got, I don't know, maybe 1,000. So if you had loads of sales, you've got to individually type in each city, each county, all the way through to pay back the tax. So you can learn how to do it, but most people aren't as interested as tax as I am, and they prefer to focus on, building their businesses in other ways. So it's not a secret what we do. People can do it, but if you want to take away that stress,
it's fiddly, is what you're saying.
It's fiddly. Yeah, it is fiddly.
So how do you? This sounds like a system designed to be complicated.
I would definitely agree. It is one of the most overly complicated systems there is, as is most of the US taxes. It is designed to confuse and cause issues. There's loopholes. There's things that can.
But you wouldn't have a business. If it was simple, you wouldn't have a business.
You're absolutely right. We would not be here. Yes. So
you'd find something else to do.
That, of course, we would. So yeah.
So how can you? I mean, okay, so what are the downsides of see, because if you sell into the US and you don't register for sales tax, are you going to get found out?
Good question. So I think the US is very, very behind on auditing online businesses. So post-COVID, there was a massive explosion online. Loads of people have jumped to online businesses, making online stores. Many of them are not compliant, I can tell you now. And I think the best way to assess the risk is the more sales you have, the more likely you are that you might face an audit. Now, if you were to face an audit and you weren't sales tax compliant, let's say you did 4 years of sales without collecting tax in New York, and you should have, you will be required to pay back all the tax that you should have collected out of your own pocket, plus penalties, plus interest. Some of the states that can go up to 50%. So let's say you should have collected $30,000 in tax over 4 years, and then they all came to you one day and determined that you had to pay it all back, plus penalties and interest. It's enough to potentially cripple a business. So,
do they have jurisdiction in the UK to come after you?
It's a difficult one to answer. I can't specifically say. It depends how things are set up. But if you've got an EIN number, then you are known to the IRS, and then they can go that way. But I haven't seen any cases of it. I know of quite a lot of UK and Australian companies who tried in the US, did a few sales, and then just left, and they probably weren't compliant. I haven't heard any horror stories of the US coming overseas just yet. However, it can always happen.
So do you think it's worth, I mean, this sounds like, so selling on a marketplace is fine, they do it all for you. If you've got to sell on your own website, then you've got to think about this stuff.
Yeah, so one of the things that I have helped clients with in the past is, let's say that they're doing an Amazon FBA store and a Shopify store for their own brand. There is a way you can separate it into two businesses, so the nexus that you reach on Amazon doesn't cross over to your Shopify store, so you could theoretically do it that way. So there are loopholes of ways that you can kind of minimize the risk. And then you've got to consider how much maybe will it cost to hire somebody to stay on top of it versus the risk of liability and things like that.
Okay. So what kind of have you got any horror stories for problems that people have got into?
Yes. So my most recent horror story, I had a client who accidentally clicked on their WooCommerce store to collect tax in all jurisdictions, and they did the same on their Shopify store. So they just assumed that they had to collect all the tax. They didn't realize that they had to then remit that tax, and they did this for 4 years without getting audited, and they ended up collecting $200,000 in tax, and then they went and sold the business to somebody else, who then did their own internal audit and found all this tax with no returns as evidence of it being done. So we helped this client pay back all the tax, contacted every single state. It cost a lot of money, and the penalties were pretty high on top of that. So it cost him probably how much he sold his business for. Well, not.
So he was very
quite,
honest, really, in
he had to be. Because this is another interesting thing. If you're ever considering selling your business along the line, that could stop a sale going through.
Yeah.
So he had to be honest. And there's one thing of failing to collect tax. That's one problem. But if you collect tax and don't remit it, that's actually a criminal.
That was a bit daft. Collecting tax and not paying it, that's a bit daft.
It is daft, but it was easy. So that's, if anyone's listening, that's one thing. Don't make sure you don't collect tax unless you know where it's going.
Okay. Cool. Okay, I've got one final question for you. When you're not thinking about US tax, what do you do with yourself?
I am a huge lover of tennis, so
Excellent.
I will be playing tonight, provided it is not still chucking it down, and then I'll go and watch it in Wimbledon wherever I can. So I've been playing that since I was a kid. So
have you been to Wimbledon?
I have. I went this year. Got
Cool.
to watch Alcaraz in the 4th round.
You got a debenture.
Yeah, I did.
Excellent.
It's great. Very good.
You're that big a fan?
I am that big a fan. Yeah, absolutely.
Did you see that film Challenges recently about tennis?
No, but it's on my list.
It's all right. It was quite good. Be like tennis. Lots of sweat flying everywhere.
Yeah,
Cool.
for sure. So great sport.
Jared, lovely to speak to you. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, so you can find us at www.rjmtaxexemption.com. And one of the things that we can do for anyone listening is we do a free Nexus assessment survey where we basically check and just see your sales tax nexus and provide you with that information.
Cool. Great. Very interesting. Thanks so much, Jared.
No problem. Thank you.
Yes, bye-bye.
Bye.